Wife divorces me to live off other men's money, now wants me back after realizing no one wants her. About 7 months ago, Emma, my ex-wife, 42 female and I'm 44 male, moved away for her new job. She had been offered an upper management position in a company that she had applied to without my knowledge, and the reason she had done so was because she knew that I would never agree to move away. We had been together for 12 years, married for 10, and we have 8-year-old twins together. Both our families are situated here, and a few years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia. Since then, it's been very difficult for our family because my dad's health hasn't been great and we are always afraid of when we might lose him. Naturally, as his only son, I want to be here for him and also for my mother, and so, I hadn't wanted to move away after my dad's diagnosis. I thought that Emma would understand what I was going through, but instead, she told me that I was being a little too sensitive and that I can't just keep turning down opportunities to work out of state and expect her to do the same just because my dad was sick. Before my dad fell sick, we had actually been planning to move away because she wanted a change of pace, but after my father's diagnosis, I told her that it would not be possible for me anymore. She tried to be understanding of it in the beginning, but gradually, since last year or so, she had started to become very restless, and we had been fighting quite frequently over this. She wanted to move away because she felt stuck here, and I couldn't possibly think about moving away while my dad was in such a condition, especially since it would also mean having to leave my mother to deal with it all on her own. Even if I had had any siblings, I wouldn't have been able to leave because my conscience wouldn't have let me. And I kept trying to explain that to Emma, but she refused to see my point, and I just felt like she was being selfish, whereas she felt like I was the one being selfish. And then, earlier this year, she just came home from work one day and told me that she had applied for a high-paying position in a company outside of state and she got the job. That came as a shock to me and I wanted to be happy for her, but I just couldn't because she hadn't told me anything about this application or this job. I was kind of in shock, so I just congratulated her and then I said nothing. That day, I remember we got into an argument because she didn't think I was happy enough for her, even though it was a pretty big deal because I have to admit, it was a good job with decent pay. However, I was just upset that you hadn't even thought that she needed to talk to me about it before applying, and she told me that she didn't even think that she would get the job, but now that she had it, she was thinking of moving away and she wanted me to come along with her. She wanted to relocate our entire family, knowing what my feelings on this were, so we ended up fighting over that and it was one of our worst fights. It got so bad that she ended up leaving to go stay with her parents for a couple of days and we had no contact for those days, so I actually thought that she was going to file for a divorce and put an end to this. But then, she came back home and we ended up deciding that we were going to try and patch things up between us because we still had the kids and we couldn't let them down. And back then, I thought that I could still make it work with her because I didn't want to let go of this marriage. I was sure that I loved her and she told me that she did too, which is why she wanted to make it work. But she also didn't want to give up on her dreams, and so, after a lot of discussion, we decided that she was going to take up the job and I would stay back here. She told me that she was going to try and travel back and forth as often as she could, so we could make this work. We had no other option but to choose a long-distance marriage for now since neither of us was ready to give up on each other. It was hard for me to agree, but I had to do it, at least for a while, before we could figure out what we wanted to do in the future. So then, she left and she would come back home every alternate weekend, but even then, she would only get to spend 2 days with us and take a flight back on Sunday evenings since she would have to be back for work every Monday. It was tiring for her and I knew it, but there was nothing that I could do since she had agreed to this arrangement. With time, I guess she started resenting me, and her attitude towards me got worse. We had promised each other that we were going to try and make this work, but every time that I would try to call her during the week, she would always be really mean to me and we would inevitably end up arguing about something or other. After a certain point of time, it started feeling like she didn't even want to speak to me, and instead of calling her on my own, I started waiting for her to call me first. And then, we started speaking less to each other, and even when we would talk, it was always very cold and weird, and I didn't know what to make of it. Then, eventually, after having spent almost 4 months away, she came home one weekend and had divorce papers with her. At the time, things were really tense between us and she told me that she couldn't do this anymore. When she came back home that weekend, we hadn't spoken for almost 6 days in a row because of the argument that we had the last time that we spoke. And I wanted to come up with a reason not to get a divorce, but I couldn't come up with anything. Because the last fight that we had was one where she had actually thrown out the idea of separating and ending this marriage for good. I should have seen that coming because for months, not only had we been fighting, but she had also been getting closer to a certain friend of hers from high school. This friend, let's call her Melissa, was not a good person and was an even worse influence. Emma had always been good friends with Melissa and that woman had even been there as a bridesmaid at our wedding, but I had never liked her because she had always given off a weird vibe. From what I knew about her, she was a total gold digger and always went after rich married men so she wouldn't have to commit to them, but would still get the benefits of being with a rich guy. She would even brag about it as if what she was doing wasn't detestable enough. When I used to bring up her behavior with Emma, she used to tell me that it was her personal choice and that we shouldn't judge her. That was quite infuriating, so eventually, I just stopped talking about Melissa and decided to ignore that friendship altogether. It got easier eventually because after Melissa moved away, and Emma got caught up with work and kids, they kind of drifted apart. Anyway, I had known that Melissa had also been living in the same state with her son for a couple of years since she had moved away after her second divorce, probably to scout for new prey. Coincidentally, when Emma got a job in the same state, she reached out to Melissa and she was the one who introduced her to the city and helped her move in and stuff along with me. I was there all along, and I had hoped that maybe Melissa would have sobered up after so many years, but she was still the same weird person. I was not comfortable with Emma being so close with Melissa once again, but she was the only friend that Emma had there, so I couldn't even say anything about it. In the months that Emma had been staying there, she had told me that Melissa had been really supportive of her since she was on her own and had even introduced her to a couple of her own friends. This so-called group that Melissa had introduced Emma to was very dicey because as far as I remember, it was 3 or 4 women who were all single mothers. They had met through Facebook and had a Facebook support group kind of thing together. From whatever Emma had told me, these women had all been with men and had kids with them, but due to a variety of reasons, their partners had abandoned them and now, they were raising their kids on their own and the only support they got was a child support check. However, it was not as sad as it sounds because most of the women that Melissa was friends with were just like her. They had gone for super rich men, had affairs with them, got pregnant, and then when these men had decided to stay with their wives and families, these women managed to get them to pay a big fat child support check from them which supported their lifestyle. It actually wasn't just as support for them, it was also payment for them to keep their mouths shut since I'm assuming these men didn't want word of their affairs getting to their wives. It was very common for all of them to have some online business that nobody was really interested in, but they were self-employed and wanted people to believe that they were doing it all on their own. But in reality, they were running a scam and proudly called themselves independent women who had all the freedom in the world to live by their own rules, while living off of the money of men who had been stupid enough to fall into their traps. Emma thought it was funny, but I thought it was disgusting and I didn't think that it was a good idea for her to be socializing with them. However, she kept defending her friends and told me that she had gotten to know them personally and they were all really nice women. And given how we were already fighting about so many things, I didn't want to fight about that as well, so I didn't say anything. But then, in the last fight that we had before she filed for a divorce, she told me that she really admired Melissa's strength because even without any help from any man, she was raising her 2 kids brilliantly on her own. I ended up scoffing at that and I told her that anybody who makes as much money from getting pregnant after an affair with rich guys would also probably be taking good care of the kids since that was not their child but a meal ticket for them. And that was what led to a huge blow-up fight between us because before that, we had been trying our best to keep a lid on our tempers but the frustration had just been building up for months and that day, that little disagreement over one thing was enough to set us both off. We started cursing at each other, telling each other exactly how much we hated the situation, and just kept blaming each other. After one point, she just said that if we were just going to fight like this all the time, it was probably better for us to go our separate ways and then disconnected the call. I thought she didn't mean that and I thought that she was going to call me and apologize, but that never happened. And I was really upset with her as well, so I didn't bother to reach out either. That weekend, she showed up with the divorce papers and I decided to go ahead with it because I couldn't find a reason to stay with her anymore either. We had tried our best to make it work, but it didn't, unfortunately, and even the kids, the ones we were supposedly staying together for, hardly got to see us together and even when we were together, we were not happy. So rather than letting them grow up in a toxic environment, we decided to get a divorce. The divorce process was relatively simple since we don't have a waiting period here in our state and we only had to divide our joint assets, which was simple enough. I got to keep the house and the kids since she didn't want to take them away with her right now and said that at the moment, we could stick to our arrangement of her coming back here every weekend to meet them. We had been splitting the cost of raising them anyway, so we continued to do that. Once they were a little older, we would leave it up to them what they wanted to do. It was not convenient for either of us, but we didn't want to fight for custody since we believed that our kids deserved both of us in their lives. As for the house, we had a verbal agreement that we would put it up for sale in a few years and whenever it sold, we would split the money. Anyway, the divorce was finalized about a month ago and I didn't think that she would speak to me after that because even while we were getting divorced, we hardly had anything to talk about outside of the meetings with our lawyers. Now that everything had been finalized, I was trying to cope with the situation since even though it actually felt like nothing had really changed since we were still going to stick to the same routine, life was definitely going to be pretty different for me now because I was no longer married to Emma. My kids were also very confused about what was going on, so I had to explain to them that their mother and I were no longer together, even though nothing exactly had changed. But last night, she decided to call me up again so we could sort things out between us and give our relationship another chance because apparently, she had made a huge mistake and she wanted to reverse the divorce. I could tell that she had been crying and she was pretty much hysterical on the phone call. She started ranting about how she had unintentionally glamorized the lifestyle that Melissa and her friends had been leading, and because of that group, she had decided to file for a divorce. She hadn't mentioned it to me earlier because she knew how I felt about Melissa, but after that last fight that we had, she had spoken to her group of friends, and they had told her to go for a divorce. She had been skeptical about it initially, but they talked her into it, so she spoke to a lawyer that they put her in touch with. But 1 month has passed since then and she has tried literally to get herself to move on, like dating apps and blind dates and even going out every other night, but has only ended up hooking up with random people, and that has only made her feel pathetic because at least with me, even when we were fighting, she knew that she loved me and I loved her. Now, she's just really lonely, and more than anything else, she also misses the kids. Her friends told her that this would pass, but she hasn't been able to get rid of the loneliness and the guilt after the divorce. On top of that, her company had been doing pretty well when she joined, but she has had several pay cuts since then because apparently, they had kind of embellished how well they were doing to get her on board, and her income now doesn't match what she had been offered initially. It's not just her, everyone in the company has been going through the same thing, and they keep telling people that things will work out if they keep working hard, but she thinks it's just so that they can retain their employees, and that's another part of the reason why she wants to come back to me. She said that she really wanted me to consider it and reverse the decision to get divorced because she just misses her family and what her life used to be. But after she was done talking and explaining her situation to me, I just felt furious with her because I couldn't believe that she had allowed her stupid and immoral friends to talk her into getting a divorce. I had always warned her against Melissa, and I had also made it very clear that I didn't like the company she was keeping after she moved away, but she never paid any mind to me. And now, they had turned out to be the reason that she ended up making the decision that she did. Had it been her own mistake, I might have even been all sympathetic towards her, but the fact that she had chosen to listen to people that I hated, really got on my nerves. The audacity to call me up and start crying about all of these things as if it had all been very easy for me, just made me very upset, and I ended up snapping at her. I told her that she had dug her grave, and now she had to lie in it because I was not going to help her out here. In spite of everything, I had tried my very best to make this marriage work. And I'm not talking about the last few months, I'm talking about ever since my dad fell sick. I had been fighting for our marriage relentlessly, and for a while, so had she, but she had been immensely selfish for the past couple of years, and that's how we had ended up here, divorced. The least she could have done while she had been staying away was at least try to understand my feelings and situation, but she allowed herself to get carried away by friends whom she knew I did not like. I told her that she was not a high school kid anymore, and that a juvenile excuse like her friends had influenced her to make bad decisions was not going to work with me. She wasn't coming back home drunk to her parents. This was a very different situation, and it had affected my life and even the kids. And now, just because it's inconvenient for her, she wants to reverse the divorce. Firstly, of course, that's not how it works, and secondly, even if it did, I wouldn't do it. I was really upset by everything she had told me right before that, and I just couldn't hold back. So I told her that now, if she was feeling really lonely and guilty, then she should just ask her friends for help, because I'm sure if they were the ones who had encouraged her to file for a divorce, they cared about her enough to take her in, if she was not doing well financially, and support her emotionally as well. I was also very annoyed by the fact that she had basically just confessed that she had been hooking up with random people for the past month after our divorce. Technically, she was single, so she was allowed to do whatever she wanted, but it made me feel really uncomfortable and depressed because I felt like it had cheapened whatever we had shared for the past 12 years. So I told her that I did not want her back in my life anymore, especially after the things she had just told me, and that I was going to make sure that the kids stayed with me because I was not sure if she was a good influence on them anymore. She started crying even harder and told me that she was ready to do anything it took to make things right, but I told her that she had made a decision and she had to live with it, and the kids, and I did not need her anymore. Then, I hung up and blocked her. When I woke up this morning, I had several messages from my ex-in-laws, and they were telling me that I shouldn't have said the things that I did because she was already really low and it was not nice of me to kick her when she was down. They said that it was not necessary because she was already regretting everything that she had done, and seemed to try and punish her more by telling her that the kids and I did not need her. I wouldn't have cared about what my ex-in-laws say, but they have been very kind to me after the divorce, so I don't know. Am I the a-hole for telling my ex-wife that I don't want her back and that the kids and I don't need her anymore? Update 1. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for all the support that you guys have shown for me in the comments. I don't know how to say it, but it really means a lot to me, knowing that so many people are on my side here. And it means even more to me that so many of you have identified with my story and have reached out to let me know that things are going to be alright. It's very kind of you guys, and I know that things are going to get better. It has been 4 days since I posted, and I had blocked Emma after we had that conversation, so she hasn't been able to get in touch with me. But this weekend, she is supposed to come over to see the kids and spend some time with them, so I don't know what's going to happen then. For the past couple of months, ever since the divorce was initiated, she would just pick up the kids from my place and go to her parents' place to spend the weekend with them and occasionally spend some time here with all 4 of us for some family bonding. But mostly, she would try to stay away from me, and I was fine with it because it just made things easier for me. This weekend, though, it's anybody's guess. I'm actually kind of dreading having to see her because her parents have been very upset with me and have told me that the things that I said to her were so harsh that she has ended up crying every single time that they have called her after that. I haven't been responding to any of their messages because I don't really know what to say to them, but I feel kind of bad because I know Emma is kind of a really non-emotional person, and I know that I really managed to hit her where it hurts because she's been crying so much. Even though she hasn't exactly been kind to me and our circumstances haven't been the best, I still feel really sad for her because we could have had a great life and I feel like she ruined it all for herself. I did my best to make it work, but it's not like I can make the marriage work on my own without any help from her. I don't know what to say anymore, to be honest. Update 2. So Emma came over yesterday to pick up the kids and we ended up having a discussion about everything that had been said. It was clear from her appearance that she had been having a very hard time, and I could see it on her face, and I found it really hard to be cold to her. So then she asked me if I would be willing to talk to her just for a bit, and I ended up agreeing. Once the kids were in their room, we got to talking and she told me that she was really sorry about everything. And she wasn't referring to the recent months, she was referring to the past couple of years because it had taken a lot for her to realize how selfish she had ultimately been, and she even said that she did not deserve me. She told me that in the past few weeks, after the divorce, every time she would go out on a date or hook up with any guy, all she could think was how she wasn't sure if this was the kind of life that she wanted for herself and felt guilty for throwing it all away. She had built it up all in her head, but it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and when she realized that, it was too late for her to do anything about it because she had already lost me. While talking, she started crying again, and I tried to comfort her, but she told me that it would only make her feel worse because that just made her realize the kind of person I was and how badly she had treated me. It was kind of bittersweet, hearing her say these things about me, because I would have really appreciated that when we were together, but now, I don't know what to say about it. Anyway, after a while, she told me that she had decided to quit her job and move back here so she could be closer to her family. She also wanted to spend more time with the kids because she had already been losing out on so much time with them. It didn't seem worth it to stay outside for such little money and sacrifice so much. The only request she had for me was that she wanted me not to file for full custody like I had said I would, and I told her not to worry about it. I had said it in the heat of the moment, but I didn't have any intention of actually doing it because both she and I had always maintained that our kids shouldn't have to suffer, and I knew that they missed their mom. So spending some more time with her would definitely do the kids more good, and I would be supportive of that as well. After we were done talking, she apologized to me for everything once again and told me that I was a good man. She also promised me that she was going to try and be a better mother and a better person, and thanked me for even letting her speak to me after everything that happened instead of just shutting the door in her face. That got me a little emotional, but I didn't say anything, and then she left with the kids. So that was it, and I didn't actually expect things to turn out to be like this, since I thought that she was going to come over and fight with me, but this was nice and unexpected. She has apologized, and I'm not gonna say that I forgive her and everything is in the past, but at least we are on the right track now. I don't think I can go back to her again. That's very unrealistic after everything that has happened, but the least we can do is try to co-parent our kids to the best of our abilities and make it as peaceful for them as possible. And of course, it will be better for us as well. Now let's see what the future holds. Update 3. Hey, guys. Okay, so 4 months have passed since my divorce, and after my last update, Emma stayed true to her word, and within a few weeks, she quit her job and moved back here. Since then, our kids have been splitting their time between the two of us. They spend half the week at my place and the other half at their mother's, and it's been pretty convenient for them till now. Emma had been with her parents for a couple of weeks initially, but then, she was able to find an apartment a few blocks away, and the kids are having a lot of fun because they have 2 homes now. As for my ex-in-laws, we are back on normal terms. Of course, we don't speak to each other on a regular basis, but they have apologized to me for bothering me back when Emma was having her breakdown, and they told me that it was not my fault, but as her parents, they were just really stressed out and they ended up blaming it on me because it was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. Emma and I are also back on decent terms. I wouldn't say good terms because it's not like we are friends, but we are cordial with each other and have kept things civil. I'm also slowly but surely moving on and trying to process everything that has happened, and it's going well so far, and I'm hoping that it continues to get better after this as well.